You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here so bright and early on this Wednesday morning in June. My name is Bill Allen. I'm CEO of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, and on behalf of all of the staff and members of the LADC, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this exciting Future of Healthcare Innovation Forum, which is the latest in our series of future forums, where we look at the changing nature of the industries that drive this regional economy and what that portends, most importantly, for our workforce of the future. I hope you'll consider joining our online conversation this morning as part of this forum at hashtag LAEDC Future Forum. Please join into the conversation and participate in these important discussions. For those of you who don't know the LADC, we exist to advance opportunity and prosperity for all of the residents of the Los Angeles County region. We were created in 1981 by the County Board of Supervisors to stand as a 501c3 public benefit corporation in the community and engage the power of the private sector in full partnership with the public sector to advance these economic interests, to ensure a more inclusive, more sustainable, more vibrant economy for the people of this Los Angeles region, while also promoting our environmental sustainability and advancing social equity in the region. To that end, in 2015, we embarked on an updated strategic planning process with more than 500 stakeholders in the region, from business, labor, government, education, environmental communities, faith-based communities, nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, to develop renewed consensus about the way forward for growing this economy in the ways I was describing. And as part of that, we talked about key industry clusters and the need to better understand these key industry clusters, their needs for growth, their needs to be competitive in an increasingly global economy, and the need for us to prepare our workforce, starting at a very early age, frankly, but throughout lifetime learning opportunities, to access these opportunities in each of these key industry clusters. Now, as part of that work, we've partnered with the LA Area Chamber, the LA Orange County Regional Consortium of 19 community colleges, the Center for Labor Market Excellence at Mount San Antonio College to create something called the Center for a Competitive Workforce. And that Center for a Competitive Workforce is creating new research on the changing nature of these industries. And there's a recent report that is available for you here this morning and on our website and on the Center for a Competitive Workforce website about the changing nature of jobs in the healthcare industry. And you'll hear from Lori Sanchez, one of the authors of that report, later this morning. As technological innovation, globalization, climate change are taking our economy in new directions, our region has to stay innovative. We have to remain forward-looking. With a population of more than 13 million people in our LA metropolitan region, healthcare is one of the largest employer industries in our region, with more than 588,000 people employed in public and private sectors of the healthcare industries here in this region in 2016, accounting for nearly 10% of our total regional employment. The industry is projected to add more than 66,000 jobs by 2021. So it's a key part of our economic vitality as a region, as well as our quality of life. Our speakers this morning will help us take a look at the innovations taking place in this important industry, help us look ahead at how jobs may be changing, how to prepare our workforce for those emerging jobs and changing jobs in the industry. We can't do these events without the generous contribution of our sponsors who make them possible. And I want to begin by thanking our longtime executive committee member, Willie Hagan, and his great institution that is hosting us here this morning, California State University, Dominguez Hills, really for their foresight and Willie's personal foresight in understanding how important these kinds of forums are. He was a partner to us in creating this series and has been a partner in each and every one of the 7 forums we've conducted to date. We really appreciate his leadership and that of his whole team, and I'll do a more formal introduction of him in a moment and invite him up to say a few words of welcome to you as well. Also want to acknowledge and thank Susan Stone and Mike Quindazzi from PricewaterhouseCoopers for their commitment to helping us anticipate the future of our region's key industries and the jobs associated with each of them. They've provided this series with unparalleled expertise with their extraordinary team of researchers and thought leaders at PricewaterhouseCoopers. We want to thank them for making these conversations possible. As I said, I want to formally introduce President Willie Hagan, who's become a dear friend of mine and of this organization in his years as the 10th president of California State University at Dominguez Hills. The university, as many of you know, but for those of you who don't, it's important to know, is a diverse and welcoming community of learners and educators collaborating to change lives and communities for the better. With strong academic programs, dedicated faculty members, supportive staff, many campus amenities you can see, including this beautiful library and new science centers and others that I hope he'll tell you about that are rising behind us. This university is committed to connecting students to high quality and literally transformative education opportunities while providing our region with a vital resource of talent, knowledge, skills, and leadership needed for the individuals who pass through this institution and our region to thrive today and in the future. Willie Hagan is the 10th president of this extraordinary institution. And after 7 future forums that he has led for us, today will be his final as president of this institution, but he's assured me that he will continue to join us for these conversations as a fellow learner along with all of us in the future. The reason that it's his final is, for those of you who don't know, he's retiring after a distinguished career in higher education and a remarkable tenure here at this university in just a few days, and he leaves this institution in very, very fine shape. He's had a remarkably distinguished career in higher education, and here at this university since 2012 when he was appointed president, he has really demonstrated extraordinary leadership, helping to increase the university's enrollment and graduation rates. Its tenure-track faculty, its campus facilities have improved significantly, including the groundbreaking he'll tell you about this new exciting Science and Innovation Center. It is also impressive what he has done for the students who pass through this institution, for the faculty who impart their knowledge to those students, for the community who is engaged through his leadership with this important institution. And we, his regional stakeholders, are very, very grateful to him. But also, at the LADC, we're very grateful because with all the time it takes to be a university president, he found time to engage with us as a member of our executive committee, as a member of the internal strategic planning committee to set the next 5-year direction for the LADC. He impressed upon us just how important it is to align economic and workforce development and how important it is to keep our eyes on the horizon. So it's with pleasure and a personal sense of deep gratitude that I introduce the 10th president of the California State University at Dominguez Hills. Please welcome Willie Hagan.
Well, yeah, he's right. I retire on Friday. And just in advance, if you're thinking of asking me to be on a board or a commission, no. I'm going to relax, and I will come back to these and be a part of the audience. You know, when you retire, you're reflective on the things that you've done, but you also look ahead. And this particular topic on the future of healthcare is particularly important to me because it was only a few weeks ago that I was turning in my paperwork for Medicare A and B, and I was thinking about all my own health issues and like say, okay, you know, you want all these innovative things to start happening in healthcare so that they can take care of you in ways you didn't take care of yourself. So I'm very excited about this topic. I'm also very excited about this topic because if you know the history and mission of this campus, and I'm not going to go into great detail of that, you know that healthcare and higher education are intertwined. Many of you know that this campus was formed as a result, or moved here as a result of the Watts riots in 1965. What many people don't know is that the McCone report in 1965 also said that one of the primary causes of the Watts riots was the lack of access to health care. That it was over 15 miles through traffic to get to a hospital. And so they formed the Martin Luther King Jr. Health Medical Center then. And so we were brought here to be a transformative agent, to help people step up in life, be a vehicle for upward mobility. And the medical field was also seen as being very critical to provide opportunities for advancement and just a better lifestyle. And so I'm pleased to see the healthcare professionals who are engaged in this community. Our campus has a tremendous number of healthcare programs, and we have a lot of programs we engage in the community. And I'm not going to go into all those now because, again, my remark time is limited to about 3 to 4 minutes. Although as a retiree, I've found I can talk as long as I want. And people are like, oh, he's leaving, just let him keep going on. But I'm not going to do that too. But just to suffice to say that when I look out in the audience, I see people here from our healthcare programs on the campus, but I also see people from the healthcare centers, the hospitals, the programs that we work with, and I appreciate you all being here because, again, healthcare is critical not just to this region, but it's also critical, as Bill said, to the overall economy of this region in Southern California. Now, if I did have a rope, I'd pull it, and this would drop down, and behind us, you would see our Science and Innovation Building. It's 3 stories. And there's a lot of the infrastructure up, so later on, sneak behind this, and you can look out the glass window and you can see that. Down here in February, we're going to start tearing down the temporary buildings and putting up a new academic building that will also house our College of Business and Public Policy. And what we've been saying to the state leaders is that we want all of our facilities to look like this library. We're very proud of this library, but we also know that the nature and the quality of facilities, you know, they are tools that the faculty use to teach and the students use to learn. So we're trying to not just provide high-quality faculty and staff, but also provide the facilities so they can do their jobs very well. There are a lot of great people that you're going to be hearing on this panel, and so I don't really think I need to say much more other than to the folks who are here from the university, I've enjoyed it tremendously working with you. To the folks who are new to this campus, come and visit this, I think you will find that as a partner, this university will be there for you. And I think that, yeah, I'd like to say to Bill and his folks, this has been a great partnership, as he mentioned, and I couldn't think of a better program to end in terms of, you know, my tenure here. So as he mentioned earlier, in the future, I can show up, sit in the audience, ask questions, and I won't have to get up here and chat. So again, welcome. I think you're in for a very informative discussion, so let's get the show rolling. Thank you.
Willie, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you here for many years to come participating in these forums, and we look forward to getting to know your successor, President Parham, and having a wonderfully mutually beneficial relationship with him and the institution for many, many years to come. As we begin our program this morning, I'd like to actually direct your attention to video screens. We have a brief video about how healthcare and the consumer experience is becoming more digital, and I think it sets a nice pretext for our conversation with the terrific speakers who will be presenting to you this morning. Please direct your attention to our video screens. What a great question. What leaps are we taking? Because these industries are changing in ways that are truly exciting. It is genuinely an exciting time to be alive in the world today, and particularly in relationship to the innovation going on in the healthcare world. And our first speaker is actually a woman who's at the forefront of that innovation with a remarkable new program at Cedars-Sinai. Ann Wellington is the managing director of Cedars-Sinai's Accelerator Program, a program designed specifically to transform, in the ways you just saw in that video, healthcare quality, efficiency, care delivery, by helping entrepreneurs bring their innovative ideas and technologies to the marketplace. Cedars-Sinai, as we know, is a world leader in the clinical care and research of heart disease, cancer, brain disorders, among many other areas. Pioneering research achievements are changing healthcare, and now Cedars is helping change healthcare technology. Their accelerator program, I believe, has just welcomed its 4th class of innovators. Ann will tell us a little bit about it. We are delighted to have her here to present our keynote kickoff remarks. Please welcome the Managing Director of Cedars-Sinai's Accelerator Program, Ann Wellington.
Hi, good morning. I'm so happy to be here and share a little bit about the work we're doing at Cedars. That was a great video. I was thinking I'm going to have to get this video to bring back and just put maybe a Cedars logo on it, and it's everything we're trying to do. So as we mentioned, we are kicking off our 4th class. We'll be starting in July 9th. This is a picture from our last class, and I'd love to share a little bit today about the work we've been doing and sort of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we're seeing both broadly and here in Los Angeles with the companies that we're working with. So we'll start with a little bit of the what. And the question we get most often when we say we're from the Cedars-Sinai Accelerator is, what exactly are we accelerating? What's sort of the process that goes into the work that we do? And when we think about what we're trying to accelerate, we're working with these companies to take this timeline of bringing technology into the market and scaling it up and getting it out into people's hands and trying to move them through some of these milestones that they'll be hitting in a more rapid manner. Some of the earlier companies we worked with have just created a product. They've got an initial prototype, or what we sort of call a minimum viable product. They're ready to start getting it into people's hands and getting feedback. And by bringing them into the program, we can get it into lots of folks' hands at the health system and through our partners, get that feedback quickly and help them iterate and really refine their products into something that's really meaningful in the healthcare system. We also work with companies that are a little bit later along and maybe have some customers and are trying to think about, okay, we've had our first 100 users, how do we get to our next 1,000 or our next 10,000 users? And we help those companies think about their value propositions, their business case, their sales models to really go out in the market and go from their initial users into hopefully being really impactful and really meaningful. When we think about sort of what types of companies are we working with and who are we bringing into this program, the ones that come to mind immediately when people say, oh, Cedars-Sinai has an accelerator program are sort of therapeutic and diagnostic things that a physician is using or handing to a patient, but really we look at a lot of broader technologies as well. We like those sorts of things. We also like back-end systems, things that help us be more efficient in things like scheduling, billing, back office, managing all of these systems that we've brought in. So for our last class, we've looked at a lot of cybersecurity applications. That's a very hot topic in healthcare right now. So we really want to look at not only the devices that are delivering care directly to patients, but anything that helps us be more efficient overall. We think of the program essentially as what we call sort of a startup embassy. So you can see here in the slide, we have our location, our innovation space that's in West Hollywood. It's immediately adjacent to the Cedars Hospital, and we want to bring companies here and help them with a few different things that will make them successful at Cedars and beyond. When we see sort of the gap between where startups are and where health systems like Cedars and others are, there's a few things that we help them bridge. One is sort of cultural differences. So when we think about the Silicon Valley concept of move fast and break things, just get your product into the market and figure out the rest later on, that's not an ethos that aligns well with what most large hospitals and health systems have culturally and are trying to deliver to their patients. So we try to use this program to bridge that a little bit. We work with the companies to understand, here's what it's like to be in the healthcare space, both in terms of regulatory requirements, understanding the ecosystem of the health system and how many different stakeholders tend to be involved in decisions. And on the health system side, we also help facilitate with stakeholders at the hospital to understand, it might be typical that when we request a meeting, it gets scheduled for a month or 2 months out. These startups, we need it next week, or we need it tomorrow for you to come in and speak with them. So we can help bridge that gap a little bit. We also provide sort of logistical and strategic support, so they have a place to work, a home base, some support around scheduling, reaching out to people, providing them with that. And then that physical proximity. I'll talk a little bit further in the presentation about connecting companies with stakeholders and mentors at Cedars, but really having them on location so they can see the reality of what's going on in the health system is really helpful to make sure that they're successful. We, in our past 3 classes, have had 28 companies go through, and these have ranged across a tremendous variety of different applications. You can see some in that top row have ranged from things like virtual reality applications to help ease chronic pain and anxiety and make the hospital stay more enjoyable for patients. We have apps to help cancer patients feel more connected both to their caregivers and to a broader community. Others that we've had that are a little bit more on the back end side that I was mentioning, Invio is a company that's digitizing research records. So we do a lot of research at Cedars-Sinai. A lot of that to date has been kept in paper binders that need storage and need review and need management. Digitizing that frees up space for more research to be done and for it to be done more efficiently, bringing some of those great innovations to market sooner. Similarly, down at the bottom, we have a company called Well, and this is a fairly straightforward concept that patients should be able to interact with their caregivers via text message, not just over the phone. And they have a great understanding of what that means on the caregiver side, so they don't need to text from their personal devices. They can have an application that allows them to manage that communication while appearing seamless to the patients who are interacting with their providers in the way they interact with a lot of other people in their lives. So when we talk a little bit about the why of why does an organization like Cedars want to engage with an accelerator program, I want to briefly mention this guy. And by this guy, I of course mean this guy right here. And this is Tom Prisolak, who is the CEO and president of Cedars-Sinai. And Tom, when I've spoken with him about this, and I've heard him say this frequently in meetings, he says innovation is an obligation. And what we mean by that is when we think about the Cedars mission around delivering the best care we can to the community that we serve, it means that we cannot pause. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep bringing those innovations in to make them available to the patient population that we work with. And for some of that, that means internal research. So a lot of the internal development around medical devices or moving some of the biomedical research forward, we can have that. But we also recognize that increasingly, that means bringing in external innovators and figuring out how do we partner with them to move healthcare and healthcare delivery forward. When we talk about sort of the how are we doing this, so I've mentioned a few of the things, but I want to go into some specifics of what we do to engage these companies and how we're preparing them for the future. We have a 3-month program. I mentioned we're kicking our 4th class off in July, and for most of July, they will be undergoing what we call mentor madness. So we bring in mentors who can help them really understand the system that they're working within. Often when we bring in companies, they fit a couple different profiles. Sometimes we have founders who come from healthcare backgrounds. They might be physicians, nurses, they might have previously worked in healthcare roles. They've identified a problem, they want to fix it, and so they've started a company. That's great. They have so much subject matter knowledge that we know they'll be able to really solve real problems, but we want to connect them with the business stakeholders and some entrepreneurial mentors to fill in some of that knowledge that they don't have. On the other side, we often have technical people who have really robust histories in the technical landscape and say, I want to solve problems in healthcare. This is really meaningful to me. But they are in for a little bit of a crash course of what it really means to work in the healthcare system. And so we can help them understand workflow. We help them understand sort of the realities of day-to-day work for physicians, for nurses, for patients. How does their solution actually help them? How can they prove a business case or an ROI? What's the value proposition there? And how do health systems make those decisions? You can see in our picture here, we've got two of our co-founders meeting with one of our nurse leaders to really understand how the product that they want to bring in would be beneficial to this person. As we get into month 2, the second month of the program, they usually choose some mentors to work with a little bit more specifically and really do a deep dive into what they're trying to bring to market. And this is kind of the heads down month of they're working at the space, they're iterating, they're bringing it back to the folks they're working with at the health system and saying, is this better or is this worse? And then going back and either continuing that or fixing it and really trying to do that rapid iteration. This is something we think is so important that they're working with the genuine stakeholders at the health system to do. There's not an innovation team who's siloed away from day-to-day realities about delivering care. It's truly the people who are on the front lines of using these products. And then in the third month, we sort of prepare them for what's next. So we have a pitch practice that we do to make sure they really have honed in their message of what they're bringing to market. And then we connect them with investors and potential future customers. So we have lots of folks who are really interested to hear what we're working on, both potentially to purchase the products that we are elevating into the market, as well as investors who are looking for sort of exciting things such as what's next. So we make lots of introductions and really want to prepare these companies for success. It's important to us at Cedars that we're not building companies that are customized or tailored to Cedars-Sinai. We don't want to be their only customer. That is not a sustainable model for them or for us to have a lot of companies that are too tailored to our organization. Instead, we want companies that are solving problems for us that can really scale up and be successful standalone companies that are really doing well in the marketplace. We wrap up the program with Demo Day, and this is a really exciting day for our companies. We bring in a lot of those folks, those investors, press, potential customers, and they really get to share what they've learned and where they're going from here. They celebrate the success that they've had in the program and work on bringing their product out into the marketplace. Usually we bring in about 400 or 500 people to listen to their pitches, and it's really a fun day to celebrate where they've come. I want to take a little bit of time here and talk about specifically the impact that we've had here in Los Angeles and the LA companies we've worked with. I've got a little map here. I apologize. This is a very West Side-centric map, so apologies to everyone not from there, but I think it serves our purpose well of talking about some of the 11 companies that we've had so far in the program that have come through from the Los Angeles area. In our upcoming class, we'll be adding 3 more LA area companies into the program. And as we bring companies in, we do always try to look and see, are we representing Los Angeles companies and really supporting that ecosystem here. I want to spend a little bit of time talking more specifically about 3 of the companies here, and I think they do a great job of representing sort of what we bring in the program and where they've gone from here. So the first company I'll mention is a company called Stasis Labs, and this is a great sort of Los Angeles area success story. The co-founders of this company actually started the company out of a dorm room at USC. So they were engineering majors, and they had an idea about bringing a lighter weight vital sign monitor that doesn't require ripping open the walls and installing all sorts of wires, but instead could be plugged into the wall, hooked up to the patient, and upload all the vital signs into the cloud. So they started working on this at USC, brought it through USC's incubator, and we're really ready to figure out, how do we bring this product to market, and joined our first class in 2016 to really help them take the next step. Since then, they've had some really great traction actually overseas in India. So we gave them lots of feedback on, how do you actually get this into the healthcare system? And they have expanded dramatically in India, filling a gap that's there of non-ICU patients who still need some level of vital signs monitoring, and being able to offer that somewhat more lightweight monitor. And you can see the device is kind of a patient-friendly, nice UI box that they can interact with. They've also raised a lot of money and hired a bunch of people here in Los Angeles, and I think it's interesting, in sort of an interesting inversion from what we often see. Their entire engineering team is here in Los Angeles, supporting engineering development for their sales team in India. So they're a very exciting group to work with. Another one I'd like to mention is Deep6 AI, and this is one of those stories that I think the accelerator program helped them a lot. The co-founders came in with very rich technical experience around AI and machine learning. And one of them had a background working with Watson at IBM, and really said, we have this great technical platform that we can use to understand a lot of data and really give insights on it. And we want to use that to analyze physician notes and give physicians feedback about what they're writing in their notes. We brought them in, they shopped this around to physicians, and almost every single one of them said, I would never use this. This is not helpful to me at all. But we were able to say, okay, why don't you continue taking your tool that you've developed, take the technology, and see if we can find another application for this that's more meaningful, that's solving a bigger problem than just trying to take technology and shoehorn it into something. When they started talking to the folks in research, they identified a challenge that researchers have in identifying patients who could fit into research cohorts. There's tons of data in the electronic medical record, but it's not always easy to analyze and get that out and determine if there's patients who would be eligible for clinical trials. The Deep6 team said, great, that's exactly the type of thing that we're able to analyze. Let's pivot our product and really build something to help with clinical trial enrollment. So over the course of the program, they shifted dramatically and left with a very new product and a very new business model that they have been able to bring out into the market. We're using it at Cedars, they're using it at other health systems. You can see from this tweet, they've really gotten into some of these oncology trials and had a chance to sort of pitch to Joe Biden on being part of the cancer moonshot. And so we really helped them refocus what they're doing by taking great technology and helping them really understand the realities of problems in the healthcare system that need solving. The last one I'll mention here is a company called Applied VR, and this had something of a sort of similar background in that the founders who came in had a great background in entertainment and in sort of entertainment technology and hadn't previously worked in healthcare. But they had a hypothesis that virtual reality could help ease anxiety and could help ease pain for patients who are about to undergo surgery, who are in the hospital long term, or who have chronic pain. They were able to partner through the health system with researchers and with nursing and with all sorts of folks to really understand how this can be applied to patients. Coming out of the program, they've actually had 3 peer-reviewed papers published that they've worked with researchers at Cedars-Sinai and at CHLA to talk about sort of the effectiveness of using virtual reality to decrease pain. And it does show that there's sort of significant reductions in pain for people who have a virtual reality experience. They've gotten some great coverage. As you can see, the Washington Post and other media outlets have sort of noticed what we're doing at Cedars, working with this company. And similarly, they have partnered with some really great other organizations like Samsung, like Travelers, to try and get this out into the market. And so by being able to facilitate those connections and add some clinical legitimacy to the concept that they had, we've really helped accelerate their process of getting out into the market. So all of these sort of follow different paths, and I think the important thing that we think about when we think about companies is we want to bring in companies that are solving real problems, companies that we think we can help. So when we look at bringing a company in, we say, do we have the mentors here at Cedars, and also through our external mentor network of non-Cedars folks who work at other health systems, work at other healthcare industry players, or who are experienced entrepreneurs in the space. Is there some people we can connect them with to really help them make these sort of transformational changes, whether it's a small shift like Applied VR, adding in that research element, or a major shift like Deep Six, completely redoing their product. We want to make sure we can help them, and we want to make sure we feel like the team is a team that is receptive to feedback, interested in really being an agent for change in the healthcare industry. And so we look a lot at team as an important element of the companies we look to work with. Thank you all so much for your time and for listening, and I've included my contact information here, so if you have questions, if you have companies to pitch, if you'd like to mentor for us, any reason to reach out, please let me know, and I'd love to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and exciting things happening at Cedars. Anne is an innovator herself, actually. She developed and founded Stanson Health, named the #1 solution for clinical process improvement. So thank you for your presentation today. And I think I'd be remiss if I don't give you all a World Cup update. Germany, the defending World Cup champs, are actually out of the World Cup. Mexico lost to Sweden 3-0, but they both advance. So anyway, hold all of your questions. We will get the opportunity to see Anne again. I'm really excited to get the opportunity to introduce our featured speaker this morning. He's also our panel moderator. PricewaterhouseCoopers has served as a trusted partner to the LADC for many of our future-looking reports and presented at numerous of our events. We're fortunate to have this dynamic expert on the new health economy here with us today. Frank Lemon is a principal with PwC's Health Industries practice in Los Angeles for over 20 years. But before we meet Frank, let's take a look at this video and learn more about what is driving innovation.
Imagine a disruption that fundamentally changes the healthcare experience for everyone it touches. A future where healthcare anticipates your unique needs before your own body. Predict rather than react. Remote patient monitoring, therapy specific to a patient's genetic structure. Technology pushing the cusp of transformation is here. We now need to harness the huge amount of data that is constantly generated. Artificial intelligence and machine learning can act as colleagues to help us gain traction. Robotic process automation can clear the way for more efficient use of time and talent. 360-degree insights offer the potential to personalize therapy. Genomic research and simulation technologies identify the most effective drug compounds and bring new treatments to markets faster with a higher likelihood of success. Technology meets biology, forging new relationships and opportunities with one common denominator. Better outcomes and experiences for patients. These technologies will continue to evolve. Some will have staying power, and others will fade.
Technology indeed meets biology. Please welcome our featured presenter, Frank Lemon.
Well, thank you. Before the doomsday clock people start the clock, I have a few comments, so when I change the slide, you can start ticking me down. Oh, they started anyway. Well, thank you, LADC, and to the university for hosting us today. It's a pleasure to be with you. You know, as I was preparing the presentation, I had my 10 and 12-year-old daughters review the materials, and I said, Is it interesting? And they said, well, sort of. And it reminded me that there are also some very good non-tech enabled businesses, like my 10-year-old's predatory lending scheme at school, where she's collecting 400% interest, leasing stuffed animals to kids. So when we talk about new businesses, you know, there are still a lot of good non-tech enabled businesses out there. So just as a quick overview for the conversation today, I'll spend a bit more time highlighting some of the social trends that are out there driving solutions. So really, it's about how do we live, how do we move, how do we work, how do we engage, how do we care, et cetera. In the bottom of the slide there, where you see health behaviors, socioeconomic factors, physical environment, and clinical care, those are the four main indicators of health and well-being. And interestingly enough, health behaviors account for 30% of wellness, clinical care accounts for about 20%, but the other 50% is socioeconomic and or physical environmental needs. So as we go through the presentation today, I want you to think about how do enabling technologies serve to meet those broader needs versus where a lot of the investment is going around clinical and behavioral decisions. Then we'll do a very quick flyby, drone-like flyby, on the 8 technologies that we have here, 3D printing, AI, VR, AR, drones, bots, and blockchain. So jumping in on some of the social trends. So if you look at how we live today, we have an aging population. By 2050, those of the age of 65 will double, and the number of 85-year-olds will triple. So we're living longer, and we're aging, and we have a unique population. But what's unique is that people want to age in place. They want to age where they live, they want to be ambulatory, they want to be able to be independent. We have an issue with homelessness. 550,000 people experience homeless every night, and a significant percentage of that, almost a third, are families. Nearly half of Americans don't live in areas where air quality standards are met. And when you look at housing costs, it's disproportionate to those in lower socioeconomic groups, in that 50% of their income goes towards housing. How do we move? Well, we commute a lot, as you can see there. In congestion, I found a total for the LA area that the estimation of time and fuel waste is close to $23 billion in Los Angeles. So the way that we think about moving and commuting and transporting is important. California is responsible for half of the EVs that are being put out there, with 1.5 million as the target. And interestingly, millennials, one of their top issues is public transportation, and they're more likely to walk and commute alternatively than driving. How do we eat? Food consumption. When you look at the family budget, we've made huge improvements in family budget. Where it used to be, 43% of your budget would go towards food, now it's down to only 13%. But interestingly, we now see increased food allergies amongst children. We see that, and this is my favorite quote of all, by the way, the Americans spend more money at bars and restaurants than they did on groceries. I think I fall into that category as well, by the way. And then on the bottom left there, you see that while sugary drinks have gone down in price, fruits and vegetables have gone up dramatically. Now 50% of the calories that we consume are from highly processed foods. How do we care? 1 in 2 Americans aged 12 or older use prescription drugs. So we are a pill population these days. Even when you look at the use of opioids, which is a national pandemic right now, we can see that the US prescription basis for opioids on a per capita basis, compared to Portugal and France, who are still in the World Cup, incidentally, it's 6 times as large. And being an Argentine, Argentina made it yesterday, so long Germany. Telemedicine continues to gain traction, 17 million patient users by the end of 2018. We have a lot of misdiagnoses that are happening, so some of the things that Anne and others are looking at are to reduce misdiagnoses. And I'll come back to that one because there's an interesting provocateur conversation that we had with a physician who won a humanities award by the White House and a data analytics person who said, in 10 years, I will rather have data analysis tell me what I should do with my health, not a physician, because every 2 years, 50% of everything that's in the New England Journal of Medicine is obsolete. So are you going to trust a human, or are you going to trust a computer that can process all the information? The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. And then we've had a massive increase in expansion of government health programs. Some of the benefits, it does include some preventive health measures for low-income children, but it is certainly increasing the cost burden. And again, as I mentioned before, people want to age in place. So how do we learn? I love this first one. There's a 13-to-1 ratio that 13 STEM jobs were posted online for each unemployed worker that year. 3 million more jobs than the number of available skilled workers. So it's not that we don't have jobs available, it's we need to skill our workforce to be able to meet the demand of the new types of jobs. Millennials are the best educated generation in history, and on every metric as you compare them, they outperform those without college educations. In terms of the workforce who does not have a college degree, as you look at micro and nano degrees, for the 2/3 of US adults who don't have a college education, getting skill-based training in those areas make them highly marketable and relevant in the workforce. So there are programs that we can put in place to get people working in some of these new high-tech jobs. How do we work? Well, we're working almost an extra day a week on average. The workforce is working remotely quite a bit, which feels contradictory to the commuting thing, but I think that's part of the reason why people are working from home is because number of hours spent in a car. And when you look at the service industry, a dramatic increase in services over products, we've moved sort of beyond the manufacturing age in many respects, and we're moving to a service industry largely. And lastly, and I love this one, especially with my 5th and 7th graders, 65% of kids that are entering school will be working jobs in the future that don't even exist today. So quickly on engage and recreate. 18 and older spend 11 hours a day using electronic media, which is remarkable to me. We have voting, civics responsibilities are down. People are seemingly, which you can't tell by the Facebook fights that I see every day, that's down. You would think everybody was voting 110% of the time. We have, I think one of the impacts that you can see here on the 45%, that the number of Americans who are feeling lonely or depressed really has massively increased. And part of this, I think, is because of the change in how we connect and interact with one another. And then, interestingly, at the bottom here, the adults that have at least one social media account has increased significantly as well. Now, how do we recreate? We know low-income neighborhoods have less access to facilities. We know that about a 5th of the population no longer is required to have physical education in school. There is potentially corollary to childhood obesity and how that plays out. But only about half the kids go outside and play with a parent. But interestingly, millennials and Gen X folks, they love team sports like kickball, and there's even a movie made about a kickball team. So that's quickly an overview of some of the trends, and what I think we need to solve for are those type of issues. But what do the experts think about technology and the impact on society? I don't know, these may be hard to read. I'll just pick a few. But when you look at 3D printers, they're more accurate and versatile than any other mode of production. And what's interesting about 3D printing, and we've got Mark who's knows this field very well and works in it, is that you're able to quickly prototype in a way that was once not really possible. So it in effect is changing manufacturing. We look at virtual reality was once science fiction, so was the internet. That's Mark Zuckerberg. Look at the Google CEO. The last 10 years were about building a world that is mobile first. The next 10 years will be shifting to a world that's AI first. So this says a lot about where we expect technology to go. The IoT quote down here, IoT is the most fundamental change. Every person, your home, your car, and the way you do healthcare, your sporting activities will become connected. So over time, we have all these disparate sort of technology solutions. The goal eventually is to have an environment where everything comes together. So let's quickly go through. I want to quickly highlight each of the 8 technologies. And this group probably knows most of this stuff, so I'm going to just quickly touch on them. But 3D printing basically is layering on a set of materials. It started with filament, plastic filament. It's moved on. We're even now printing living cells for bioprinting. Where this has revolutionized industry is the rapid prototyping, that you can do it quickly, you can do it cheaply, and do custom fabrication. And Mark and I had a good conversation around customization versus personalization, and what's the difference between that. One can be very costly. The personalization really gets to adoption. But you can see in the middle of the page, and the next few slides will be orientated the same here. 3D printing is used on demand, custom medical devices, bioprinted organs, prosthetics, and the like. And when you look at the market outlook, what's less important about some of the slides that I'll show is the actual absolute number, but start to look at the trends of where some of these technologies are going. But this is a $32 billion market estimated by 2023. And the outlook, a lot of demand and enthusiasm. Some of the stuff is still emerging, but it will continue to get better and better. So AI. So what's AI? Really, this is how we bring computer systems together to have human-like intelligence. The main point I want to make on this slide is that is not general intelligence. So it is not like thinking and acting and reasoning with human emotion and intelligence. But that's the goal, right? The goal is to develop AI till it gets to that point. But narrowly focused, it's around creating artificial intelligence. Think about in practice, it's the brains of autonomous vehicles. And what does that mean to healthcare? I mean, we saw some of the social issues with transportation, but imagine now that you're in a car and maybe you're wearing medical devices that interact with the car, and all of a sudden you have, even if it's self-automated, you have cardiac arrest. The car can now transport you to a hospital because it sensed what's happened. What happens to like the ambulance industry, right? What happens to auto insurance? What happens to life insurance? What happens to auto body shops when cars aren't crashing into each other anymore? So there are a lot of implications, and AI is really sort of at the forefront of some of that autonomous vehicle drive right now. Global spending, $12 billion, see a massive increase, but looking at AI, 15 trillion of the global GDP by 2013, which is pretty massive. AR, augmented reality, again, this is how do you overlay things into your normal everyday living world, right? So it can be adding sensory inputs such as sound or video or graphics or data. An example here is doctors or medical students wearing headsets during surgery so information can pop up that's relevant and can produce reducing the procedural risk. The AI market, a couple years ago, 570 million. It's growing massively. U.S. market share is forecasted at $24 billion by 2024. And while it's in its early stages and has a lot of potential, the headset and the requirements are still a little cumbersome, but there are a lot of desk jobs where you could overlay AR to help people out on, say, like very dangerous jobs or fixes that can be done, maybe even robotically, but with AR sort of blended into the process. Virtual reality, this is where we're just creating a virtual world. The application is that it can help where there are things that are dangerous or costly or others. We heard virtual reality being used in pain management. I was with a group of folks that the British military is using it to treat PTSD. So helping their soldiers recreate traumatic situations and drawing conclusion and incorporating behavioral health into that. The market outlook, again, 4.3 billion, pretty substantial. The point on the outlook is there's a lot of venture money that's being poured into VR. I would say that there are a lot of factors that are limiting VR, but think of the most at-risk industries are things like training, collaboration, travel, things of that nature. Drones, everybody knows drones. We see drones all the time. Basically, a pilotless vehicle that can be controlled by a computer or a remote person. The application that I think about for healthcare is, if you are in rural areas or you're in areas that don't have a lot of infrastructure, can you send a drone out to collect lab results, right? So when you're talking about population health and you're going into a developing country and you need to get lab results back to main city to process, or can you distribute pills or medicines or devices or groceries? I think that's where the disruption is likely to come from. And again, another large $12 billion market on drones. The impact here is on shipping logistics. Principally, I think it will get to other things, but those are the principal industries that are being looked at. Bots are interesting because there are a lot of people that are really afraid of robots. Bots come in different forms. I'm working with a client right now. In fact, I'm very glad to be here today because I was in Chicago on a 4-hour flight delay. They are trying to take out $5 billion of cost, and they're trying to transform the way they do business. So for instance, can they create a claimless health system? They aren't using robots right now to replace humans, but they're building robotic process automation to replace back office transaction jobs that can be that can be done without a human, to allow those people to address their service jobs and provide better value-added services rather than transactional things. But the ultimate goal here is to get robots that are highly specialized and can operate very efficiently. The last example I'll give here, I was in the country of Colombia last year, where they opened up a new 200-bed hospital, and they had 48 robotic surgical wards, and physicians were being piped in from University of Pittsburgh Medical Center to assist in those surgeries because they don't have enough specialty physicians in Colombia to do some of those surgeries. So bots are real. The challenge right now is that robotic surgeries often cost a lot more, and they haven't demonstrated the significant clinical improvements over regular physicians yet. IoT, think of connected cities, how desktops, iPhones, devices, everything interconnect. Think about a connected home that connects baby monitors and things of that nature. So IoT, the main takeaway I want for you to go away with is this is a lot slower moving than people hoped it would be. There is a ton of money that's being poured into this. You can look at 11 trillion by 2025, but the challenges on cybersecurity and risks and other things, because you're potentially putting power systems, power grids, water systems at risk. So some challenges, but again, this is a big area that folks are looking at. In the blockchain, everybody knows about Bitcoin. And what I would say is that, blockchain is really a system of record. And what you look at it is, it's a system of record that creates a ledger that can't be erased. So every transaction that happens is recorded permanently, and you can't hack it. The other thing is, it's not in a central location. It's distributed broadly, and so people that are verifying transactions are all remote. And you can look at things like medical records and things where information, personal identification. I've seen recently things like fine jewelry and diamonds, right? When diamonds are being brought in, it's not really a healthcare example, but how to make sure that that diamond is the diamond that actually originated. But the way that we see it in healthcare is use of information like health records or health payments. And then lastly, I'm going to, some positives and negatives, and I'll give a few examples. So remember the 4 buckets we talked about that influence health and wellness. So in the behavior category, how is AR being used? Well, AR can help people exercise. Like look at Pokemon Go. It got everybody getting their steps every day. The problem is a lot of people just walked into cars and got hit and run over because they're not paying attention. So there are drawbacks to that. Virtual reality. Again, we talked about helping people envision in a virtual world what's possible. Opioid treatments and things like that we talked about can be created. The downside is if you create a virtual world, you don't have to go anywhere. So it might create a more sedentary workforce. Social economic factors, look at AI. Again, looking at allowing seniors to age in place. Smartphone devices always being on, create privacy concerns. Blockchain, again, can help with global prosperity. When we're talking about giving aid and healthcare aid to foreign countries, making sure that those dollars get through is important. But creating a record of everything means that, hey, some people that were bad actors at one point may no longer have the opportunity to act on their own. So just quickly moving on to wrap it up here. So physical environment, obviously drones. We have advantages on the manufacturing, but there are CO2 emissions for heavy cargo. IoT, again, we can connect everything, traffic signals, congestion and the like, but again, cyber attacks and things of that nature. And lastly, I'll just finish on 3D printing, right? Low cost. A great example here is for kids who outgrow their prosthesis quickly, that you can quickly develop new ones so that they can have a suitable device as they grow older. And then with bots, we talked quite a bit about this already. So with that, I'll just wrap by saying there are a lot of what ifs, what is, how will, how might these technologies impact healthcare? Who knows? Anne will know better than most of us. But what I would say is, as you all think about emerging technologies in community health, think about what we're trying to solve for in terms of health and wellness. And it's not just clinical care and behaviors, it's really kind of a whole person perspective. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Frank. And also we'll invite him back up for questions, so please hold your questions. The information on trends, strategic investments, new entrants is very fascinating. So thank you so much. Now I'm going to introduce the first of our three panelists. So pain management is a big topic of conversation right now, especially as providers and companies look for alternative ways to help patients without relying solely on medications. I'm delighted to introduce to you today a machine learning healthcare technology company who just might have a solution. Please welcome CEO and co-founder of Ascendo Wave, Martha Lawrence.
So thank you, and wonderful to be here with you today. I'm going to start off by showing you a video of the technology so that you can actually picture what I'm going to be talking about. And then I'm going to follow that up with data and slides. But to begin with, Ascendo Wave is a machine learning technology that objectively measures pain and helps manage pain. So what you're seeing right now is the consent form, and all patients in the hospital who use this technology consent to use it. So it's a patient satisfaction platform. No one's treating or diagnosing them based on it, and we're following facilities' privacy practices. So you're actually seeing the patient tablet. On the lower left-hand corner, you're going to see a bold blue head that lights up. And then you're going to see patient brain waves. We're actually capturing the full spectrum of brain activity, but we only show patients their alpha wave and their beta wave, how relaxed they are, and their level of focus and attention. So the green is their alpha wave, and we want that one to be nice and flat. In the hospital, not typically. It's usually nice and rolling. The blue is their beta wave, and when they're paying attention, it's going to go up and down. When they're not paying attention, it's going to be flat like before it started. On the left-hand side, at the top of the screen, those 5 faces, that's the pain scale. And it's going to light up based on their brain waves. So what we're doing is we're correlating their brain waves with their perception of pain, discomfort, anxiety, and nausea. So that's the pain scale. In the hospital, we tend to see the second face, the third face, and the fourth face. Those 3 faces to the right, that's the nausea scale. And that's the first time we've actually had a nausea scale in our hospitals in the country. They actually have different patterns in the brain. So the nausea scale, we typically see the first face, the second face, in departments like oncology, the emergency department, PACU after surgery. And then on the left-hand side, we have all kinds of content. So you are actually in the top section, which is the video clip section. And when you're in this section, we start changing your content based on your brain waves. Whatever relaxes you, you see more of it. So it's customized and individualized to you. We've got games, super popular with every age group. We've got movies, we've got music, Very popular on the floors at night because this is not your bedroom at home, and you have all kinds of people visiting you randomly in the middle of the night. And then because of our relationship with AT&T, if you have DirecTV at home, you can actually watch DirecTV while you're in the hospital as well. So that's a little bit about the technology. Okay, so let's show you the data behind it. All right, so we've had more than 26,000 patients use the technology in the hospital, both inpatient and outpatient, in pretty much every department except for the ICU, although sometimes it makes it in there by mistake. We have an 84% effectiveness rate, and I'll show you the data slide that's tied to in a minute. We do real-time assessment of pain and nausea, and Samsung and AT&T are our partners. And this is a patient selfie, and she says, "I love this thing. I'm currently using it at Southern Hills Hospital." Southern Hills is an HCA facility, and it really does gauge how you're feeling to change your experience. Wish it would deliver pain meds too, but definitely cool. Okay, so we have a pretty hefty N in terms of surveys. After about 10 to 12 minutes of use, patients receive this survey on their tablet and they fill it out anonymously. So 91% of patients say they enjoyed using AscendoWave. 84% said it made them feel more comfortable while they're in the hospital. And that's actually really important because what they're telling us is technology is making them feel more comfortable as opposed to drugs. 76% said it understood their pain or their nausea. That's actually a blended rate, and nausea was a later add. So if you pull those apart, pain is actually running a little bit higher in the 80s. And did AscendoWave understand the kind of content you wanted to see? And that's running at about 87%. Okay, so how does it work? So it's EEG analysis where we're monitoring discomfort and also managing discomfort. So patients have an EEG headband on that kind of looks like Star Trek. So it's around, in the front of their forehead there, behind their ears, under their hair. And the headband sends data to the tablet. It's computed on the tablet. That's where the algorithm is. And then it's forwarded to the AT&T cloud. And so we have content on there, and we're changing the content based on their brain activity. Whatever's reducing their pain and their distress while they're in the hospital, they'll see more of it. So actually, when I do it, I see golden retriever puppies running around. And other people see cartoons, and some people see sports, but it's individualized and personalized to you, whatever's helping you. So it's a Samsung tablet, and our tablet only does AscendoWave, so it doesn't do the normal stuff like surf the net. Patients can't get into trouble when they're in the hospital. We've got an EEG headband that they put on, so it's nice and comfy on their forehead. And we've got about 300 hours of content, so there's plenty of things to look at while they're in the hospital. So this is actually an important slide. So this is a pain measurement slide. So when we hit about 10,000 patients, our N was big enough so that we could begin providing pain measurement data to the hospital. And that's actually a very interesting conversation because they've never had to really think about, gosh, if I could measure pain, what would I like to know? And so now we're having those conversations. So this was what the hospitals wanted to know. And the first thing that they wanted to know was, do I have a pain problem at night? What does my day shift look like compared to my night shift? So the ON is ortho-neuro, 1,430 user sessions, so we've got a nice N. We've got the day shift, which is in gray, compared to the night shift, which is in red. And so we map that to see, do they have a pain problem? So other than one or two outliers, they didn't have a pain problem. But that was one of the things that the hospitals wanted to know. Fascinating to look at it by department. So when you look at the emergency department, we see some uniformity here, completely non-uniform in the emergency department because the people that we have in day are different than the people we have at night. So completely different. And the data really shows that. So beginning in January of this year, the Joint Commission required every hospital in the country to offer non-pharma pain treatment modalities. It's because of the opioid crisis. And so I would tell you that hospitals were interested in what we were doing before this point, but it's certainly created a different level of urgency on the hospital's side. And I would tell you I should probably send the Joint Commission a fruit basket to thank them because it's made a big difference. I mean, it's very helpful when the regulator for hospitals requires the solution category that you're in. So we provide this technology, and what's important is that we also provide data and metrics that the hospitals can then hand the regulator. So this is actually the second page of our Joint Commission compliance report. The first page is another thing that the hospitals wanted to know from us, which is, how do my different departments compare in terms of average patient pain level? So we map out, okay, what does ortho look like? What does oncology look like? What does labor and delivery look like? The med floor, so that they can see how they rank and rate, and they can see whether or not they have an outlier by department. And so we have the ability to benchmark that data, and that's what they're using and providing to the Joint Commission. The next thing they want to know, which is what we're working on right now, and that is, when we have a pain spike in our hospitals, are there any themes around that? Is that happening at shift change? When is that happening in the hospital? And I would tell you that what we're trying to do here is we're providing the data that our hospitals ask for. As a former hospital operator, I would tell you that we're drowning in data. I talked to a department head 2 weeks ago, and she goes, oh, we've got 100 dashboards. So what they need is data that's actionable, data that they can use, that they're going to do 3 things differently that day. And so we're not loading them down with data. It's like, what do you want to know? What will you use? What's impactful in terms of your operation? So that's what we're providing. So in terms of our value proposition, it's increasing patient satisfaction. The average hospital department, they have an HCAHPS scores. It's sort of how patients post-care rate the hospital. The average scores by department are up 5 to 8 points. We've got some departments that are up more than 10, even really difficult departments like the med floor. And part of that is that we not only provide the technology, but we also have employees that we embed in the hospital. And they're there during crunch times, because what we found is that our technology, when the staff is the busiest, it's when they need the technology the most, and they just weren't able to do it. So for example, in the emergency department, between 4 and 8 in the afternoon, doctors' offices are closing, people just come flooding in, and they're cranky, and they're in pain, and the staff can barely breathe. And so now we have employees that are handing out this technology. It's helping their pull-through rate, and they're happy little campers. We are part of a multimodal pain protocol, so we're being used as a part of that protocol. So hospitals are using opioids, non-opioids, Ascendawave as a part of the order set. There's a very expensive drug called Exparel. It's actually a non-opioid. It's 200 times the cost of the drug that it replaced. And so hospitals are trying to minimize this drug, so we're being used as a part of the protocol. It's considered a clinically validated opioid alternative, so it's being used for pain management. And we're actually the only company today that has the ability to measure both pain and nausea in real time. We actually have the largest data repository on nausea in the world because we've never had a scale, we've never been measuring it. So we have that data, and from a pain perspective, other than the NIH, we have the largest data repository on pain in the country, and ours is in real time. So we have this very unique data set. So what I've tried to show you today is our hospital channel, which is where we started. We were actually incubated by a healthcare system that has 177 hospitals. So we started there. Our second channel is biotech and pharma. Our third channel is data analytics. And in Q1 of this year, we signed a confidentiality agreement with a Big 6 pharma company, and also a confidentiality agreement with a global data analytics company. So the next 2 channels that are coming are, for those employers in the room, are work comp, think low back pain, and then health plans. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Martha. Your company provides such hope for the future of pain management. Our next speaker is no stranger to new technologies, having taught and worked in the private sector for many years, discussing robotics, automation, sensors, 3D printing, and how these technologies are being utilized in the healthcare delivery. Please welcome California State University Dominguez Hills Chair of Prosthetic and Orthotic Master Program, Mark Muller.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me in, and luckily it didn't have too much of a commute to come in today, which is nice. Where I'm going to be kind of focusing in on is robotics, kind of how it kind of comes through, giving a quick overview of what we've already talked about a little bit, but looking a little bit more into what really affects what I do. I make artificial limbs and braces, and not only do I make them, I teach others how to solve the problems of the people that we see. So I look at all the other industries that are out there, like robotics at Cedars-Sinai. So these are assistive robotics that are at Cedars-Sinai and being implemented, and other assistive robots like the Tug being out in about 27 or 30 different VA systems out there in the country. I kind of look at that technology and see how can this help the people that I serve kind of going through. Other robotics that are out there that are very innovative are the disinfecting robots that are out there. So one's sponsored by Clorox and others that are coming in and helping to kind of manipulate through and be able to push us forward into areas where we weren't going before. We could spend more time with that. So one of the huge areas, and it's already been discussed a little bit, is our surgical robots and that are out there. These robots that are helping our physicians practice and perform minimally invasive surgeries or open surgeries that are out there. And this field is, again, very huge, growing and growing every day. What we see in the local community here in LA is innovators that have kind of grabbed on. Cedars-Sinai and Keck Medical. Keck has been using surgical robots since 2000. The FDA approved the use of the robots, being able to really minimize the time of the patients in the hospital and then also minimize the issues that are going on with them. So I see a lot less patients that need braces and artificial limbs. One of the areas that I'm taking a look at, besides robots being used for hair transplant surgery, which I'll be needing sometime, is on the dental aspect of things. So this is one that just came out this year, and this is a company based out of, a startup company based out of Miami, and this is one of the first dental robots that are out there. So we'll be seeing this technology out there very soon. What I would love to see more of are the non-invasive surgeries. So now we're doing focused radiology to be able to use like the Gamma Knife and the Cyber Knife and TrueBeams to not only cure some of the cancer or get rid of some of the cancers that we're seeing out there, but make non-invasive surgeries happen. So they focus gamma rays or different x-rays and radiotherapy on specific areas that are going to be able to utilize, and then patients are going in with no surgery complications and no anesthesia with that, and particularly out in the same day, which is really, really interesting. So where this kind of leads and where one of the areas that I see that we need some focus on, especially here in the LA region, is helping those individuals out to control these devices. So our haptic feedback that we have with surgeons and therapists that are working with our patients, we have that proprioceptive feedback. We have that touch, we have that feel, we have that sense of the person to be able to change the modality we might be doing or the technique that we'll be doing. But with our AR and our digital reality that's coming in line, we don't have that sense of feel. The haptic sensory is really limited. And the controls that the surgeons are using on these surgical robots, you can see how minimal they are and how kind of awkward the systems are going through with that. So we have innovators that are coming through. All of the universities in the LA area are working on some kind of haptic feedback. UCLA, or USC, Harvey Mudd, going through to the CSUs, we have Long Beach and Fullerton, all working on some kind of haptic feedback sensory array that's going to be helping us not only in the healthcare side of things, but with our gaming, which is going to be very, it's very important on that side, and then our personal technologies that we have to kind of give us that feedback with that. And why do I see it as such an important thing in the therapeutic side of it is everyone that I make my really high-tech artificial limbs for and braces for can't feel. They have those devices on and they're able to perform functions, but they can't put their hand in their pocket and tell, oh, do I have a quarter in there, or do I have a nickel in there, or are those my keys in my pocket? Can I feel my pet? Can I feel how firm this grape is? So we don't have that ability to kind of sense that yet. And we have a lot of initiatives to try to get there, and this is one area we want to focus in on. To be able to do this, we have to now get invasive. So to be able to take these sensors that we're using, these haptic systems, be able to get inside the body and do direct nerve and direct muscle control of that, and that's something new. The other direct part of the profession that I'm in is internal or osseo-integrated devices. Now, we've been doing dental implants for 20 years now, and that's been working well, and being able to kind of screw right into the jawbone and replace dental products. But we haven't been able to do this on limb prosthetics just yet. We're getting there. This technique has been around for almost 50 years. But because of the infection rate and having something come externally out of a limb, it's been very difficult to do. So this is considered osseointegration, and this surgical procedure would literally put an abutment or a titanium stem into the bone and then have that come out of the skin and then be able to attach a prosthesis to that. Because one of the biggest issues that I face is that interim between what the person needs and how it fits on their skin. So the idea that we really need to push here is going to combining the internals on direct nerve control and direct muscle control with this osseointegration. Now we're really talking about human robotics, and we're able to kind of have that person sense and feel what's going on. So we have this system where we have direct nerve control, direct muscle control, where we can feel the sensing and the tensioning in the muscles, how hard you're grabbing something, and having sensors going right through the abutment into the prosthetic device to sense, can I feel what's on the ground? Am I stepping on a rock? Am I stepping on a slippery surface? How do I need to move faster or move slower through that? So this is a fantastic theory that's going on, and we're trying to get there, but we've actually been able to do it. So this is a gentleman from Sweden, where we're able to kind of start with some of this testing, and you might be able to see the cables coming literally out of his arm. This is an osseo-integrated abutment that's in there, and he has direct muscle and direct nerve control. Now you see on the right there that he's reaching up to grab a pitcher of glass in an overhead cabinet. That seems like a pretty simple task, but that's really almost impossible to do with normal prosthetics. You can't manipulate the prostheses and have it operate above your head and be able to hold something with any weight to it. So this is a really innovative way to kind of get there, and hopefully will help advance our field and make a lot of people more functional. One of the areas we want to think about with startup companies or kind of moving through is our patients that need finger and toe prostheses. So you see a lot in media about how well people are doing with their prostheses and how technically advanced they are, how fast they're running, and the different technologies they're using. But we don't see a lot of media on people that are missing a finger or a toe. I mean, maybe Jerry Garcia with missing a finger when he was picking his guitar, but that's not really much on there. But people with finger and toe amputations outnumber limb amputations almost 3 to 1. Okay? So this is a population that really isn't served well right now, and it's really effective in what the functions that they're trying to accomplish. So osseointegration for the finger prostheses is an area that we really want to focus on. So what are some of the other areas that I look at as I'm trying to figure out the curriculum to teach my practitioners how to get out into the world and see what they really want to do is exoskeletons. So being able to augment what the person can do. So with exoskeletons, we've kind of seen them a lot. We consider them robotics going on, and there's a lot of different companies that do that, but all of our local universities are working on some kind of robotic function. UCLA has been driving this for quite a while and making these augmented devices to help people with certain motions and certain movements to try to help them out on the therapy side and also on the medical side. A company, California company, XCO, was a startup that came out of the Berkeley Bionics and the Berkeley Lockheed grant, a DARPA grant that kind of started right down here, and I was able to work with that grant. But this is a commercially available exoskeletal system that focuses on paraplegia and stroke to help people get mobile, kind of coming through. And every rehab center in the LA area has some form of exoskeleton now. okay, Indigo or Rewalk or other types of exoskeletons out there. So that's a huge market in the health side of things, but more so it may be on the military labor side and just helping out individuals in lots of different careers that they're working with. Exo has been able to contract with Ford and has been able to use the Exo vest and an anti-gravity vest with their labor forces in there to help minimize some stress. Cyberdyne is another company that comes out of Japan that's been able to not only do it for persons that need it with paraplegia, but also the people that care for them, and being able to create exoskeletal devices and be able to lift those up. So I see these as needed on miniaturization and be able to kind of incorporate within the additive manufacturing side of things. And on the additive manufacturing or the 3D printing side, it is a fantastic manufacturing technique. And that's going to be what's going to stick with us. We have, I'm sure a bunch of you already have printers in your houses and been able to use them. And a lot of you have seen these enabled devices. And these enabled devices are great. They're able to print prostheses up with ABS or PLA plastic, kind of a softer type of plastic. And dads can make arms for their kids if they need them, or we can make other devices out there. While this media has been fantastic and the stories have been great, this population is really small. Okay, there's not a lot of people that could utilize these devices practically. These particular devices really aren't strong enough to use every day. They're really cool, and they're really, you're able to kind of get involved with it and kind of go through, and it's a really good feel-good story. But in a big scheme of things, they're not going to be what we need to. We need to augment this somehow. So we can create metal structures in there and be able to create devices that are a little more customized, or utilize them in a commercial aspect to create some of these external parts of the prosthetics. The really cool thing about 3D printing, stereolithography, sintering, all those great ways to kind of make this, is we can start thinking about new designs and being able to put that in place. I create prosthetic components that work, but the person really doesn't have a lot of say in it. Maybe we can put a sticker on it, maybe we can paint it. But now what we can do is think about new designs and get that person involved in their healthcare early on and really accept it. You know, that's a big thing when we're talking about a 10-year-old boy that wants to have a new prosthesis to go through. He made it, he helped design it, he kind of put it in there. We can take that to orthopedics. So we can design our own casts now, and these are single-use cast products and implementation on it. We can go with exoskeletons for arthrogryposis and different disorders to be able to print that up and change that and make it into a more acceptable device and better functioning device. And even help with our little canine buddies that need some devices out there. So these are things we can do professionally or DIY, just do it yourself. The big market for this is really internal and reconstructive prosthetics and being able to print metals. And we've been able to print metals for a little while now. This is really the expensive side of things. So you hear a lot about, I'm sorry I have to click back. This is on a timer. I forgot to take the timer off. So you hear a lot about the fused deposition modeling, the kind of filament modeling that's been going on out there, and the devices that we're making. Those are great, and they work well in plastics. But for long term, we have to do a metal printing with that. And with our metal printing, we have the ability to create titanium structures that will go internal to the body, as we kind of know. And this structure being able to go through and be able to replace bone in there, be able to go through doing artificial limbs, being able to print silicone out there, and then the bio printing like we were talking about. So being able to do scaffolding, literally being able to print a kidney up. And this kidney was printed on the, right on the stage on a TED Talk, being able to print skin. So where are these being done? UCLA, UCSD, Berkeley, all have abilities to do bioprinting and kind of get that through. So a lot of startup companies like Ether in San Francisco, and then Organovo in San Diego, excuse me, being able to print skin and do bioprinting with that, being able to print our organs. So it's a smattering of kind of what's out there and what kind of affects what I do, and it all comes through, because I'm hoping that we can print an arm up pretty soon so I can do a different job, and that'd be pretty neat to see. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think my daughter just qualified you as the most interesting speaker so far. Frank said 65% of our elementary kids will be working on a job that doesn't exist today. So preparing our workforce is essential. Please welcome the director of the Los Angeles Orange County Center for Excellence for Labor Market Research and co-author of the report you found on your seats today on the future jobs of healthcare. Please offer a warm welcome to Lori Sanchez.
Hello, is this on? Hi, everyone. Before I get started, do I have any community college representatives in the room? Okay, hi, welcome, thanks. Okay, so thanks for being here. I think I will probably pivot this, unfortunately, this great conversation a bit, because I don't have anything really cool and technology focused to share with you. But I think that the topic that I bring to you today is of utmost importance. And thank you, Frank, for that great statistic on the skilled workforce needed for the future. So as Elsa mentioned, so I work for the community college system, and I run a center that provides labor market data to our career education programs in LA and Orange counties. I've been doing this work for about the last 8 years or so with kind of limited resources and not the big data that helps to inform all of our technological advances in healthcare and in other areas. The data that we look at for the future of labor market need for occupations and technology is incredibly limited. And so with that limitation, the Centers of Excellence in LA and Orange County got together with the economists at the Institute for Applied Economics at LAEDC, and we forged this really impressive, I think, collaborative relationship in what we're calling the Center for a Competitive Workforce. So you've heard us mention it a couple of times. You've got the reports here on the seats in front of you. On the back of that report is the URL for the website that is ccworkforce.org, where we take all of the data from this report and put it on the site in a much more sort of visually interesting and accessible way. We've got data on there that can be shared through social media platforms and hopefully shared with others to sort of bring about the message of what the community colleges are offering in workforce preparation. So just quickly, so in this report, what we've done is looked at the healthcare employers in the LA and Orange County region and identified what the 5-year projected occupation needs would be for what we term middle skill occupations. So those are the occupations that are really most relevant to the community college's sort of 2 to 3 year level of education and training. So they are those skilled trade jobs. They are, as you see, technicians, technologists, dental hygienists. So all of the sort of traditional healthcare occupations that don't look quite as exciting at first blush, but that are really using all of the technological advances that we've heard from our speakers today in the way that they're assisting healthcare providers. So you'll see that, you know, we've got just a really promising outlook for middle skill occupations in the region over the next 5 years. It's good news for us. And so you may or may not be aware that we've got 28 community colleges in the 2-county region here in LA and Orange County that offer more than 30 unique healthcare training programs. And in the last academic year for which we have data, we conferred over 5,000 student awards in those 30+ programs. So we've just got a wealth of trained, skilled, and ready to work students for you in ambulatory services, residential care, hospitals, community health, so on. So this is just an example of some of the types of programs that we offer. Again, they're mostly traditional, but we do have some programs that have just come on board that have been in response to employer demand. We do always look carefully at what employers are telling us is the need and then work really quickly to put a program together to serve that need. In the last, let's say, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, we developed a program for orthopedic technicians. And that started just with a conversation from an employer who was advising a local college and saying, we don't have orthopedic technicians, we cannot find them. Sure enough, they brought that request to our center. We started doing the research and found that there was no program offered in the state for orthopedic technicians. So we did our due diligence in researching the field, understanding the skills and requirements for that, and then eventually started a program at Rio Hondo College that has just graduated its first cohort of students. So the community colleges really are available to be that sort of quick response system to our local employers. So in my mind, I think, what is the future of, the healthcare innovation? I think for us, we really think about what is the future for the healthcare workforce. And I think for the students that come through our system, there's not really, there's not going to be a very significant change in the occupations or the service that we provide, right? So we will be continuing to work with technological innovation and inserting it into our curriculum to keep our students up to date with healthcare needs. Our students are also really representative of the communities that they serve. So we've got a very diverse community here in LA. Our students are also incredibly diverse, bilingual. They have strong roots in the community, so they tend to stay. We hear a lot from employers about turnover, the difficulty in attracting employees, and we've had a few really successful cases where we're able to really get our students into those positions with local employers and help with that need. Also, as I mentioned with that example of the orthopedic technicians, that our colleges are able to respond really quickly to advances in technology. And I should note, not just in these healthcare occupations that you see here in the report and that I showed on the screen, but to Anne's point, we also have really robust programs in cybersecurity. We do 3D manufacturing at some of our colleges. We do have health information technicians. So the colleges really focus on not just healthcare, but all of those sort of support activities that are used in hospitals and other healthcare provider establishments. And so as I mentioned, some of the benefits to working with the colleges, you can tell I'm making a sales pitch, right? Like, let's get our students into work. You saw those openings that I showed you on the previous screen, but if you look in the report, we do a comparison of all of those annual job openings and how many students we're putting through the programs, and you see where we've got such a wide gap, and it looks, if you're looking just truly at the numbers, it looks like in the next 5 years we will continue to be in a deficit of having those skilled workers. So part of the way that we need to try to address that is by attracting more students, right, and showing them the benefits to pursuing careers in healthcare. We've identified these occupations based not only on their projected 5-year growth, but also are they paying wages that will help them to live independently here in LA, given the cost of living. So those occupations that you see highlighted in the report and on the CC Workforce website are those that are paying above the living wage, according to MIT, for the region. So we're doing our best to sort of market and attract our students, but we really need to have the promise of employment on the other side. So that is something that we continue to struggle with and are always looking for ways to find those opportunities, not just for employment, but for visits of your facilities, for taking our faculty in for more professional development to see some of these new innovations that are happening and how they can sort of take that then back to the students and just get them really excited about pursuing this type of work. And so in addition to the challenges I just mentioned, we also have a challenge with trying to find the faculty to teach these programs because the wages are so good and so competitive in the healthcare field. we're having a hard time sort of attracting, especially nurses, right, to come and teach the future of workforce. So I was at an event recently where we said this, and someone offered like, oh, maybe it's, you know, nurses who are about to retire who are retiring. I don't know, but if you have any ideas on how, you know, we might be able to attract faculty, or if you've got anyone in mind that you think may be a good fit for coming into one of the colleges and teaching, please reach out. We also have some difficulty with preceptorships. And these are obviously critical in getting our students the time they need for their clinical training. We also have the responsibility of not only teaching and trying to keep up with all of this innovation and technology, but also teaching to the licensing requirements. So the more help we can get from employers on understanding what your needs are, so what are those technological needs, what are those software knowledge areas that you're requiring, the quicker we can get that information built into our curriculum and modifying the training, that only helps us better prepare the workers for your businesses. And then, as I mentioned, like clinical placements, right? So we have this strong call out to all of our local employers, because there are so many of them, to, you know, really help us help to provide you with the workforce that you need. That's all I've got for you.
Speakers to come on up, and we'll do a panel and get some Q&A from the audience as well.
Well, thank you all for the contributions that you guys are making. Really, Mark, I think you're my new pantheon of heroes. I have our parents set up a play date so I can come look at all the cool things you guys are doing. Maybe starting out and with the work that you're doing. I think you gave us a little bit of a flavor as to why you're doing it, but now that you've been doing it for some time, what are sort of the lessons learned? Like, you know, if you had started this next week, what would you have done differently, or maybe what would, you know, what would the criteria change? Would the program change?
I think some of the lessons that we've learned in working with the companies, I don't think we would make a dramatic change, but some of the things we've seen is, in order to have a successful group that we bring together, we try to create a class that covers a lot of different diversities. So covering different areas of need in the health system, covering different levels of maturity of the companies. So from very early stage companies to also having a few later ones in the class really helps those entrepreneurs connect with one another and support one another, as well as sort of different technology stages. So I think, you know, some of the stuff we've discussed today is very futuristic and is very, you know, it is really exciting and is probably sort of in small numbers right now. Great to have some of those companies come through the program and sort of provide that futuristic spark. Others that we work with, the technology itself is not that exciting or sexy, but it's a great tool for our providers to start using right now. Like I mentioned, text messaging, not exactly cutting edge, but something that we can put in providers' hands tomorrow and say, you can use this with every patient. So getting that balance helps us keep our stakeholders engaged, helps the companies support one another, and really helps the program be as robust as possible.
Imagine text messaging. Maybe someday they'll invent something where you could pick up something like a phone and talk to somebody. So,
nobody does that.
Right? My kids tell me that all the time. So, Martha, when you think of, so you started in industry, right? You sort of grew up in
Hospital operations.
In hospital operations, but you guys went a different. You took a different approach to funding and sort of, you know, launching this new business. Maybe share with the audience a little bit about what your journey looked like.
Sure, happy to. So unlike most young companies who seek outside funding, we didn't. My partner and I started this company 10 years ago, and we have self-funded the company or funded it through customer revenue. And what I would say is, if you don't need the money, don't take it. Just because the early money is the really expensive money, right? You're giving up a lot of your company in those early days. And so what we wanted to do was to really grow it to the point where we then began to add additional channels, and then we were ready to scale it, which is a very different scenario than in the early days. So we had the ability to do it, and it allowed us to do something that the VCs would never allow us to do, which was to go really deep. So a lot of companies go an inch wide and like a mile deep, and then they get stuck. And so what we did was go really deep and had this incredible database. And then once we had that database, we wanted to scale. But that would have been very difficult because a VC would have wanted me to be in 100 places, as quickly as I could be. But our real value was as a potential data play and data company. And so getting that data was high on our list and how we strategically moved forward.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that. And you're right, the first money is very expensive. So, Mark, fascinating presentation. Obviously, the advances that are being made are very futuristic. But when we talked earlier about sort of the whole person, right? What does technology mean when it intersects with a real person and their challenges, what you're solving for? Talk to us a little bit about, you can create the best widget ever, but when it comes to user adoption, making the patient or the user really feel good about it, the personalization versus customization, what's your experience and how is that balanced versus making the most technologically efficient or ergonomically correct prosthesis or something?
Right, and that's something we deal with all the time. I get so disheartened when I see this device that we've spent months creating for this individual sitting in somebody's closet, because they're not able to use it. And these are all tools that we make for the individual, and they really have to be specific for that person. So we can get an off-the-shelf wrist brace or an ankle brace or something like that they utilize for a little time and then kind of put away. But the people that I see, the pediatric populations or adult populations or those athletic populations, they really need to have that specific element put into it. And that really doesn't exist. We have to make it up every time. And that's why 3D printing is so attractive to our profession, because everything we make is a prototype. There's nothing really mass produced on large quantities anyway for our field. So when we try to force that on someone, when we try to force a more economically effective device on someone, they never accept it because they didn't have any design input on it. They didn't have any way to say, hey, this was mine. I need this every single day, and it's part of me. You see an artificial limb, and you think of it as just a bunch of components put together. But that's part of the person's body. They utilize it every single day to do what they need to do to help their community out and help their family out. So they have to have that design input into it. And now with automation and digitization, we can give some of that to the user, which is awesome to be able to do that.
I have a question, and I hope I'm not wading into anything controversial here. I know in, for example, the deaf community, there is controversy sometimes about giving children cochlear implants before they're sort of able to make that decision themselves. Is there any similar sort of controversy in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so congenital anomalies that have, if someone has fibulomelia, tibiamelia, where a bone doesn't grow, well, that child can't decide whether I want a deformed limb or do I want to amputate that limb to maybe be better functioning. So we have that controversy quite often. And when do we start putting a prosthesis on someone? And typically if someone is missing an arm, we will say when you fit the arm when they start sitting up because they're starting to reach out in front of them and utilize that. Some parents might want to take that controversy sooner and put it on sooner, or some might hold off later, and we find the individuals that hold off later never really utilize that device as a tool. So now with osseointegration, that's going to be the huge controversy. Do you put an abutment in a child's limb just because you hope they're going to be walking better with that? So that is going to be a really big controversy.
Yeah, and it's a really good point that you bring up. I was just reading an article yesterday that Google is using AI to try and predict the time of death of a human. So they're looking at someone who's hospitalized, they're using artificial intelligence, they're looking at, sort of recreating the physiological reactions in the body. And right now they were somewhere in 12 to 16% sort of in their accuracy. But at some point, as that develops, they're going to get closer to 100%. And then we have a real moral and social dilemma in this country to talk about as something advances. I think we all know that the vast expenditure in healthcare on end-of-life heroic procedures that take place has a huge burden on medical resource. So at some point, do you get to the point where the technology is advanced to say, hey, look, regardless of treatment, this is likely what's going to happen, and it can be relied upon where families start having different conversations. And so with every one of these advances, there are social and moral implications to what we do. So it just reminded me of that article, kind of interesting. Maybe, Lori, because I know we want to have some time for the audience as well. Thanks for the presentation and what you're doing to get our skilled workforce out there. I think of a client of mine who had a very large Department of Defense contract, and they had a lot of back office operations that they needed. And they went to local community college and they set up a 2-year degree in claim processing. Mm-hmm. And that's been a feeder for this organization and the lifeblood of keeping them viable. When you talked about sort of middle skill and broaching sort of, higher skill type of jobs, how do you sort of handle those things? If someone comes to you and says, okay, we have all these technician jobs and those are great, but by the way, maybe we see that down the road, we're going to need somebody that can fix the metal printers or the 3D printers. How do you all think about creating programs and working in the community college system to create that curriculum, bring in those professors, and create a workforce? Because there's a ramp-up time to do that.
Yeah, so our state chancellor's office has actually made a really significant investment in career education for the development of new and modification of existing curriculum, all to meet this forecasted need for 1 million skilled workers in the next, I think, 20 years. So to that end, the chancellor's office has put resources on the ground to do exactly that, which is to take information from employers and fast track it into the colleges for program development. In the region here in LA and Orange County, we have, it's essentially workforce intermediaries. We have 2 of them that are specific to the healthcare field, and one of them was a contributor to those challenges that I mentioned here. So we're constantly trying to keep the pace of what employers are identifying as the workforce need based on the technological innovation, right? And so we're fortunately with the colleges, we're able to do that not just with these credit programs that lead to a degree or a certificate, but also through offering training for employers for very specific courses, with adult education, with non-credit courses. So we actually have quite a myriad of different program types that we can offer that have various response times.
Great. Yeah, I think of we had a big workforce of the future strategy for our own firm. We have roughly 200,000 employees across 174 countries. And we're predicting that roughly 50% of our workforce will be contingent labor. So that changes the game quite a bit. We're finding that a lot of the younger workforce, they'll come in and they'll work 6 months and then they want 6 months off, right? And they'll work really hard. And so we've had to set up a system called Talent Exchange where we have contractors. We also think about highly skilled people. Like, I might really need a surgeon specialist, but I probably can't afford to keep them as a full-time employee. So how do we think of our workforce as being different in the future? And I think some of that reskilling, I think what we'll find is a lot more entrepreneurship and contract type of work as folks piece that together. I know we've got about 15, 16 minutes, 17 minutes left. Any questions in the audience?
Hi, my name is Brandon Howard, and I love everything that you guys are doing. Thank you for hosting this event. My question is, in regards to how you guys sort of incorporate a lot of the innovation that might be coming from outside of your systems. I know that Cedars-Sinai has a great program. LAEDC has an incubator program as well, if I'm not mistaken. But how do you guys go about like sort of connecting with people? I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs here. I'm an entrepreneur. A lot of innovators that have ideas that can answer a lot of the questions that you guys have proposed today. But to have those conversations, how do we connect? You know, I know that a lot of what I'm doing and other entrepreneurs are doing is limited by the amount of resources that they have. So how do we connect with universities, institutions to sort of promote, you know, faster healthcare solutions as opposed to waiting to get into an incubator program that might only happen once or twice a year?
Sure.
That's a great one. So on my end, we steal technology from every profession to try to make it work. So we don't invent a lot on our own. So running into that is, and when I was a technical services manager for a prosthetic manufacturer called Oser, that's what we ran into quite often. We had great ideas and couldn't get them out and kind of getting through, and knowing that the grant system takes so long to kind of get that going through. And so we started up a think tank with Rancho Los Amigos just recently, and this is a specific orthotic and prosthetic think tank where we're getting in others to come in from all different entities to try to promote that through before they go to a nice incubator site. And Cal State's done a great job with their incubator program too, on the kind of the level of the startup side. We have a new incubator program kind of starting up. So to hear Cedars going on and hearing about LA, I don't know if Orange County has an incubator program yet, but that would be something I would also be interested in, finding out better pathways to get those to market.
Yeah, something I think is important. So a lot of different organizations, big and small, have innovation programs, want to engage with startups, and are looking for that. One of the challenges that we have is finding startups. And you know, we have a lot of channels that we go to regularly. We go to investors, we look at pitch competitions, we look at press. We try to do as much research as possible. We had about 400 companies apply for this coming cohort. To get those 400 companies, we had 5 people working on recruitment and fanning out across the country to identify those. Some organizations that don't have that level of staffing still want to work with startups. So I would say reach out to organizations and ask about what they're doing for innovation, and then try to, for entrepreneurs, identify ways to make yourselves more visible for programs to find you. And like I said, pitch competitions are a great way to do that. You know, researching programs and reaching out to them, asking other entrepreneurs and getting engaged in sort of entrepreneurial networks. When we go to other cities, we go to co-working spaces, we go to other programs to try and find those early stage companies. But I'm sure there's a lot that we're missing just because we can't find the coolest startup in the world that only has 2 people and doesn't come across on any of our searches.
And I think what's interesting about that question is there are a variety of ways for folks who are entrepreneurial to sort of be discovered, if you will, right? I mean, there's the startup route, but I was given a presentation at Stanford University, and one of the professors there in the medical school, you know, again, humanities award winner on patient-physician interactions, and he was talking about how the depression rates and job dissatisfaction rates amongst physicians are at an all-time high. And that has huge implications for health systems that are trying to recruit and retain physicians and highly skilled resources. Now, Stanford has less of a problem recruiting people, but obviously they want their doctors to be happy. Well, one of the folks that was the most entrepreneurial was a medical student who came in and said, forget this, I'm not gonna sit here and be depressed because I'm doing the 10,000 clicks a day into a computer. I'm gonna wear Google Glass. I'm gonna set somebody up that's gonna dictate every single thing that I'm saying and enter it in the system for me so that I can move on and do something else. And then he ended up funding a company or founding a company and piloting something. That's one way within, but the other way is, you know, there are companies, you know, like Cedars, there are ventures all over. I will tell you that most industry venture groups are looking for what are new entrants doing, people from outside their industry that can disrupt what they're doing. That's what they're attracted to in terms of figuring out how to disrupt their own systems. Another question back there? Yes. Oh. One back here, and then we'll come up here to.
Okay. Hi, my name is Terry Hitt, and I teach at Mount St. Mary's. And I have an answer to Lori's question and a question for Martha. As far as how to recruit healthcare professionals to become teachers, I think that it would be very beneficial if you reached out to companies in the community and asked them to help fund the program so you can pay close to equivalent wages for nurses and other healthcare professionals. Because what's happening right now is the students that are coming out, the newly licensed nurses, in the old days, they used to be ready to hit the ground running with a couple weeks orientation, and there they were. That's not happening in today's environment. Basically, hospitals are being forced to create their own new graduate programs, and there's 4 to 6 months of both didactic and on-the-job training for these people. So if they could customize whatever the program was to what their needs are, and they don't have to pay because it's costing them between $25,000 and $50,000 to train these people. And if they're only going to stay for 2 years, that's a heck of a investment for them. What if they gave you that money so that you could hire those teachers who were experienced professionals and help your program, and they don't have to do the training if they could customize it. So that's my suggestion to you.
Thank you very much. I think that that's part of the benefit that of the college is partnering with LAEDC and allowing us to bring these issues to this broader audience. So thank you for that.
Okay.
And you had a question as well.
And I have a question for Martha. Are you just marketing your device to hospital-based, or is that also a retail product?
So at this point, it's still the hospitals. We know that it will go home and it'll be retail, and that was part of why we chose Samsung and AT&T as partners, right? Because they know how to reach that particular marketplace. And the reason that we know that that will happen, and I didn't really talk about it in my slides, but we have patients every week trying to buy the technology from the hospital, every week. And we knew that it would be a hit. We didn't really understand how significant it would be. And I would tell you, having spent 18 years in hospital operations, no one was remotely interested in anything we had, let alone buying it. And so we have patients, just a quick story, we have patients that, we have so many stories, we've had to put them on Salesforce, but like an example is a family of 5 that was in the emergency room. The patient, one of the patients got cared for. The family refused to leave until everybody had tried a SendoWave. And I would tell you, when people come to the emergency room, when they're done, they want out of Dodge. They're not usually looking to hang out and spend some time with us. So we actually needed the ER room, and so we're like bringing a SendoWave tablets in there so that they can all do it so that we can get the room. So we understand that that's a need, and I think part of it is that we did a really good job with market product fit by bringing it to a health system. We had 4 medical directors working on it. We had clinicians over 2 years guiding us to what they wanted at the end of the day. And so this technology just sort of projects empathy. We understand what this is like for you. We're trying to do everything in our power. And so patients experience this in the hospital, and they don't understand why they can't take it home. So we're going there. Oh, you're sweet. Thank you.
Well,
Thanks
you're
so
helping
much.
prevent opioid addictions, but causing, addictions to SendoWave. So. All right, we had a question right here in the center.
Hi, this question is specifically for Martha, and I have a lot of respect for the success that you've had, and especially the self-funding part. Because I'm an entrepreneur. I created an app for connecting nurses with healthcare companies and vice versa. But one of the challenges that I have faced in our beta is just getting companies to move away from the archaic ways that they've been doing things, just because they're kind of stuck in this motion of doing things like, I always joke, like, it's right there in front of them and they're over here in the Rolodex doing this, and I'm like, but it's right here. Like, you just have to log in, So I've found that the challenge is trying to get like these big healthcare companies and big agencies to move away from these like old ways of doing things. And I'm just wondering if yourself or if anybody else on the panel has any advice in that area.
No, it's an issue. I would tell you one thing that's really helpful is understanding workflow, right? So I came from a hospital environment. That's my tribe. I understand exactly how to do it. You have to have a really light touch for the clinicians. You have to do everything possible to make this as easy for them and think through every implication of that. And if you're able to really articulate that well, then I think you remove some of that resistance. But I would tell you, and often entrepreneurs don't know this, that when you are deploying in a hospital environment, you know, there are all kinds of tapes going on in the clinical staff in their heads. And they're saying lots of things, but like two of the things that they're typically thinking is, oh, great, some new toy from administration. I'm just going to wait till this one goes away too, just like the others. So they're waiting it out, so that's part of it. And then the other is, the other tape that's playing is, how on earth does administration have money for this when I haven't gotten a raise since X? Right? And so they're wondering how this is happening. And so I think you've got a lot of those things going on with the staff, which implicate, and I would say a lot of times technology, I used to call it at HCA, it was D&D, deploy and ditch. They leave this technology and then it's like, okay, so now we get to do all this and add this to our workflow. So to the extent that they understand how you're trying to benefit both them, their patients, the ecosystem, how this sort of fits into the entire infrastructure, I think that really helps with the conversation. What helps with us is that patients aren't clicking their buttons anymore, right? They're really happy and they're entertained, so they're not hitting the gotcha button. So, and that helps the clinical staff because they can then do some of the other things they're wanting to do because patients they're spending at least 100 to 160 minutes on the technology, so they're not calling them.
You know, Martha brought an interesting point. She says you have to know workflow. So she's solving for a process need, not adding work on to somebody, but there's also understanding workforce. So you have a legacy workforce that's been in place for a long time, and it's hard for them to do things differently at times. But you have a new workforce that's coming in, and their expectations are very different. Mm-hmm. And even like when I say, oh, I will Google that, my girls don't even use the word Google. They're like, search it up. They could care less if it's Google. Right? To me, Google is due diligence. I'm doing it all on Google. So branding, other things, the workforce is going to change, and their expectations around usability will be very different than trying to integrate. So timing, obviously, with that is a challenge when you're coming in as an entrepreneur, but workforce will be a big predictor to that. How are we doing, Rick? Okay. Can we, have you maybe come up and close us out here?
Thank you.
Sure.
I really, really think this has been one of the most informative and inspiring forums on the future of this particular industry. Will you join me in thanking these wonderful presenters? Anne, Lori, Martha, Frank, and Mark, you've each brought us remarkably enlightening perspectives on the changes at foot in this extraordinary industry. And I also want to thank our sponsors, Cal State Dominguez Hills and PwC, for making this forum possible, this whole series of forums possible. And I also want to thank our staff. Elsa Flores, who was identified in the program, I'm not sure you introduced yourself when you came up to help moderate the day, but Elsa leads a remarkable team here of our strategic relations group that engages so many important partners in the work that we do. Rick Molis is our director of events and puts on all of our events. So thank you to Elsa, Rick, Mark Nicholson, Manisha Horsham, the whole team who staff these events. We'll be continuing this series of future forums looking at fintech and banking on September 26th. I hope those of you who are interested will join us. If you have other colleagues who are interested in that sector of our economy, please do let them know. You can start registering soon on our website at ladc.org. Please visit the ccworkforce.org website and download these reports. We have them not only on the future of healthcare services, but entertainment and digital media, powering economic opportunity, which is a general look at the future of work. And there'll be more of these deep dive analyses coming in the weeks and months to come. I want to close, I think, with Tom Prisolak's quote that Ann shared with us, that innovation is an obligation for all of us to remain competitive, for all of us to ensure a vibrant future. We must constantly be thinking in new ways, acting in new ways. Today's forum was meant to empower you to do exactly that. Do us a favor by going out and doing exactly that. Let's change the world we live in for the better. Thank you all for being part of this meeting.